Okay. Okay. How about now?
Yeah, I've clicked on what I want to present, so it's processing. I don't know how long that will take.
All right.
Okay. So can you see what I'm presenting? Because I've clicked on what I want to present.
Okay, I can see it from my end, but it's not showing yet on the. Okay, let me add this to the screen. It should show up
Oh, okay.
now. Yes, it's loading.
Yeah, I can see it now. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay, so why is loading? So I'll just briefly welcome everyone. So welcome everyone for joining today's class for the backend track. So please, we just have a few persons on Twitch, which is four, and we have more persons joining us. So for those of us here, you can kindly drop a message on your Discord room. That's for the backend track to have more persons joining. And we also have Uchenna here, and is going to be taking us today. So, Uchenna, please, you can start. Thank you so much.
Okay. I wish I could see, just get a feel of how many people I'm talking to. But nonetheless, good evening, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Ichin Nadrell Icon. I am currently I serve as the founder of Icons Tech Systems Limited. Icons Tech is a startup that is trying to do things differently in the health, education, and event management sector. Um, Prior to taking up that role, I have served and currently serve as a full stack engineer and consultant to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and as a solutions architect to FCMB. I have 7 years experience in building robust applications and languages I write are JS, PHP, Laravel, that's the framework, Code Fusion, and Plant UML. That's pretty much anything missing about me. I didn't drop social media handles here though, but I'm just remembering now. I should have actually put them in here. Yeah. So what we'll be talking about today is the topic is JavaScript data types. We'll be looking at primitive data types, reference data types. We'll be looking at identifying these data types and some other things, right? So data types on its own is quite a broad concept. It's a mind-boggling concept. But as engineers, these are things you'd use every single day, you know. So you need to understand it, you need to know how it works, you need to be able to identify various types of data types when you see them, right? So the learning objectives for this session would be to understand what data types are, to understand the number of data types we have, the types, and to be able to identify the types under their various subgroups. So there are two major subgroups. We have primitive data types and we have reference data types. On this slide here, it says other data types, but that would be updated and sent back. I think everyone that joined should be able to get the slides, and I would send them back to, I'll send them to the organizers to share. Diving in, we would be taking an introduction to data types now, right? And for that, would first start with a definition. So forgive me, I am presenting from Google Slides, and some things are a bit distorted, but then again, I would do my best to explain them. So what really are data types, right? So data type, as it were, is a combination of two words. We have data and we have type. Literally, the name explains itself, right? If you already have a computer science background or you have a programming background, you understand what data is: bits of unprocessed information, um, that can be used to get insights on several other things, right? So data has types, and the way the programming language would reference every input and output is usually by allocating a type to it. So in programming, a data type is simply a classification that specifies that specifies the character of the value that a variable will hold, right? The character of that value will determine the types of actions that can be performed on that value. And when we're talking about these actions, we're talking about mathematical, relational, or logical operations. So the character of the content of a variable is what we call the data type. I'm just trying to break it down basically, right? What you can do with a data or with data depends on the type of the data. So the things that determine the things that you can do with that data is what you actually call a data type, in quotes. So across several programming languages, there's several ones. There are several rules for declaring and not declaring. But the good thing about JavaScript is not strongly typed. So um, that should be easy to get on with. Yeah. If it were a language like Java or C++ or C Sharp, which are strongly typed, you would really need to declare a variable properly before you're able to use it. An undefined variable or an undeclared variable rather would throw an error. So we'll dive deeper now to a common misconception that we have. So there's this misconception. Even today, one of my friends is a senior engineer too um, at Kudas. When he saw the flyer, he said he's curious about the topic. JavaScript does not have data types, and I had to tell him, well, JavaScript has data types, but it's not strongly typed, right? Many people think JavaScript does not have data types, but it actually has. So I'll explain the concept of data types in JavaScript. It's different language to language, right? So let me say this now before we take a deep dive, right? JavaScript variables do not have data types, but JavaScript values have data types. I will explain it again. So after this, I would quickly turn on my browser and we'll do a bit of work on console, right? This is a portion of text that is gotten from the ECMA standard. ECMA is um, that's the standardization body for JavaScript, basically. And this is what they said. They said an ECMAScript language type corresponds to values that are directly manipulated by an ECMAScript programmer using the ECMAScript language. So just substitute ECMAScript here for JavaScript, right? The language types are undefined, null, boolean, string, number, and object. And I'll explain this more in detail. Like I said earlier, JavaScript variables do not have data types. However, JavaScript values have data types. So when I go to the console, I would quickly show us what I mean, right? I believe that everyone coming here by now would know what a variable is. But if you do not know what a variable is simply a space in memory. That's it. That's what it is. A space in memory that can hold certain values. So if you were coming from a background of Java, what happens is when you are declaring the variable, like when you're creating that space in memory, you are automatically declaring the type of data that variable can hold. That's what you do in some languages, right? However, in JavaScript, when you declare a variable, you don't necessarily have to declare the type of data that variable can hold. But what happens is whenever you pass in a value, now note value, the variable is different from the value. The value is what goes inside the variable. So the value can have a data type, but the variable itself does not have a data type. That's basically. So you may come up with you may be faced with a scenario where you ask this question, probably in a trivia or quiz or whatever. So JavaScript variables do not have data types. However, JavaScript values have data types. These are the JavaScript data types. Okay, so for this, I'll explain further as well. So we have null, undefined, boolean, number, string, object. And then we have symbol. Symbol was recently added in ES6, right? For the purpose of this presentation, I'll be taking us through everything else apart from symbol. For null, undefined, boolean, number, string, and object, besides object, everything on this list is known as primitive data type. There are basically two subgroups. We have primitive and we have reference. The primitive data types here are null, undefined, boolean, number, string, and symbol. And the object part of it, the object data type, is it has other subtypes under it. That's when we have arrays, we have functions, and we have other objects as well. So I will discuss that as well when we get to just do some console work. Um, like I mentioned, the whole data I mentioned previously, all are called primitive except object. I'll explain later on. So then we'll now need to go into how to identify a data type.
So hello guys, if you can hear me, say hi. I believe it is his network. Please, if you can hear me, go ahead to drop a message in the comment section. Let me know you can hear me. So hi guys, if you can hear me, just let me know. Say hi, drop a comment. Let me know that you can hear me. Okay, hi. Thank you, Silas Evan. So that means you can hear me. I believe Uche is having a little issue with his network. Let's give him some minutes to get back. But while we're at it, I will have to give me a minute. So we'll try to get him back on stage. Okay. Hello, Uchenna. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, we lost you for a while there.
Yeah, sorry about that. Um, I just
Okay.
wanted to show us a few things. Am I audible? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're audible. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. So you can go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So I wanted to just take us to the console and just um, put us through a few things. So if you can see my screen at the moment, I just want us to just do a few exercises real quick. Everything I want to do now is already on the what's it called now presentation, but I am very certain that we could get a few things here. So if you can see my screen, please confirm if you can see the console tab. Could you confirm if you can see the console tab?
Oh yes, they can. You can see it.
Okay. All right. So we would need to work on primitive data types. I've mentioned a few things about them. That I've mentioned the names. So we have undefined, we have Boolean, we have number, we have string, we have object, and we have symbol. So I would just want us to just
Sorry, hello,
identify
Tina.
them. Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, Tina, can you hear me? Okay, can you zoom in on your screen? Thank you.
Okay. Not sure I can really zoom in from here, but give me a moment.
So, hello, Tina. We can't see your screen.
Okay, what about now? Can you see it now?
Okay.
Is this
Yes, we
is
can.
it so is it zoomed properly?
You still have to zoom in a bit.
Okay. So the part of the screen I can zoom in to is the browser part. This is the console. So I may not be able to do that. But just to give me a minute, I want to just try out all my possible options. Is it better now? Oh, I don't think you can even see anything. Oh,
It's
sorry.
looking too small. I, I don't know what I'm
Okay.
seeing anymore.
Okay. I think I will just have to just use the. I'll just have to use the presentation then.
Oh, um,
Apologies, learners,
I
but
think
I
this.
think when I start typing, it should be okay.
All right. Okay then.
So I would type here. I would also reference it again in the presentation. So please bear with me while I do that. So, like I said, trying to identify the data types, there is a keyword that we use in JS called type of, all lowercase, to identify the type of data that we're trying to process. So if you look at my console here, I can declare a variable and call it our variable, right? And for this presentation, I would make our variable equal to 50, right? Once I enter this, I can see that it is showing me undefined here. But if I want to actually get the type of this, you already see that it's number. So with the type of, I can show. So why it's showing undefined here is because you've not, what you did was just declare the variable, right? But if I want to know the contents of that particular variable, what is the type of data? What's the data type? I can know by just using the type of operator. So I can see that type of operator is giving me number for 50, right? That means that I can tell from the type of data, the kind of actions that can be performed on that data. I can perform mathematical operations on it. I can perform um, relational operations on it. I can also perform logical operations on it. But if I wanted to change the game, I could just say our variable, and this is where JavaScript is good. It's not strongly typed. I can now add quotes. So the moment you add quotes, single quote or double quotes, or between a particular value or at the end of a value and the beginning of a value, you automatically change that, not automatically, you change that value to a string. So what happens here is a form of coercion, which we like to call typecasting if you're coming from another programming language. But that coercion is simply how you can convert one data type to another data type per se. So we are using the same variable. Please note, okay, just so I don't confuse us, let me use another variable. Let me say our string variable is equal to 50, right? And I'm using the quotes. Once I enter this and I do a type of on the string variable, what I get is a string, right? If I wanted to convert our variable to string, I could also do that. And I will show us when I'm done listing all of these things. The other type we can look at is a data type called Boolean. So a data type called number, basically, right? I just remembered I didn't state that. Number is basically your normal hexadecimal figures, ranging from minus infinity to plus infinity. That's what your number is. In JavaScript, we don't tend to, we can further divide it, right? You could also have other programming languages, you have things we call integer, we have floats, and we have double in some languages, but JS is just number. You can do what you want to do with it. If I go up here and I say our variable is now equal to 50.5, and I do this and I do a type of, let's see what that brings for our variable. Sorry? Still brings number for us, right? So the decimal point does not turn into something else. It's still number, as opposed to Java or C++, where you'll be having double or float per se. For string, a string is basically a group of characters. Yeah, group of characters enclosed in quotes, in quotation marks. So the moment you wrap up, no matter what it is, if you wrap it up in quotation marks, you have turned it into a string at the point of declaring it, right? The next one I'll talk about is Boolean. So for Boolean, if you have a computer science background, again, you know that Boolean means true or false, one or zero in computer language, right? A Boolean value is mostly used for what we call flags in programming. So a flag is usually, you can either do a flag to be true or false when you're expecting either of two values. Is it so think about the technology that powers your switch, your bulb switch. Your bulb can only be on or off. It cannot be on and off at the same time. So there are certain business logic that requires only one of two options. That's where we create variables that are called Boolean. So a Boolean is either true or false, right? You can also use Boolean when you want to perform logical comparison. You want to compare two expressions. You can also use Booleans there, but I will go further on that much later. So let me create a Boolean variable, and I'll call it Boolean, and I'll set it to true, right? If I want to do, so because I set it to true, that's why it's actually true, right? It's either true or false. The moment it changes from true or false, it's not true anymore, per se. So if I do a type of here and I do our Boolean, I'm getting it as Boolean. However, if I go here and I put this whole thing in a quote, and I do this now, and I do a type of for our variable, it is now a string, right? Because I have now enclosed it in quotation marks. To do more things, let's try to see how we can convert a number to a string. Don't worry, there are still other ones we've not touched. We've only touched Boolean, we've touched number, and we've touched the string, right? I would also show you quickly how to compare if this is true, what you get, right? But before we do that, let me just quickly show us an object. So this is where the reference data types come in. So in terms of the object, um, let me say, let me create a variable and call it our object. And in this object, this is usually how the notation is done. This is usually how the object, sorry, I'm using a console, so I may not be able to, properly format it, but nonetheless. So let's say we have an object. An object usually, we have subtypes in objects. We have arrays, we have functions, and we have just objects like this. In your work with JS, you will come to find out something we call JSON, which is an acronym for JavaScript Object Notation, right? Um, when you're going to be, you use JSON for a lot of API integrations, several languages. You use JSON with it. That's the beauty of the objects. But I would not go that deep for the purpose of this presentation. I just want to give you an introduction into what data types are, the various types of data types, what you can basically do with them, right? That's what I want to focus on today. So let's say we have an object. The object usually has key and value. It always comes in key and value pairs. The beauty of objects, and this is where objects or reference data types are in contrast to primitive data types, they are more dynamic, right? So let's have an object, and this object is trying to describe top universe, for instance. So I would say the organization, and I'll give it a value. The name could be the name here, top universe, right? I would also give it a sector, and I would call the sector education. So let me leave it at this for now, right? This is an object. I've created an object. It has key value pairs. The keys are the first things you see here, organization and sector, and the value is the content of those particular keys, right? So if I wanted to get the value of an object, I could just quickly use the dot, right? The dot operator would show me all the properties of that object. I really wish I could zoom in more, right? This is something I really want everyone to get. So once I use the dot operator, it gives me all the properties of this object. And the properties here that I created are organization and sector. So let's say I go with organization and I hit the enter button, it shows me this is the value of our object as organization. If I was to do the same thing for sector, it will give me the value of what that particular key holds, right? So these are basic things, basically, that we could use to identify the type of data that we're working with here. I have shown us number, I've shown us strings, I've shown us Boolean, I've shown us objects. There's one though that we need to see, right? And that is undefined. Okay. So the difference between undefined and what's it called now? And undeclared, because we also have that misconception. We have undefined, undeclared. If I were to do okay, let me just use this. All right. So when I see this, I just typed in a variable A, and I pressed enter. It gives me an uncaught reference error, and it's saying A is not defined, right? This is actually undeclared, but JavaScript would actually throw the same error message. But this is undeclared because there was, in the entire runtime of this program, I did not declare a variable called A. However, if I had done this variable B, and hit enter, I can now see that B is undefined. So if I do a type of on B, what I would get is undefined, right? If I were to do a type of on A, I would still get an undefined, right? But actually, A is actually undeclared. It can get quite quite messy. So please allow me to stop here for now and return back to the presentation where I would make more comments. And then I would get back to the code again and we can just pick it up from there. There is one last thing though. Okay, I think I should just do that, right? When you are working with the type of, and I also mentioned there's a type called null, right? There's a type called null. And you wanted to, find out if something was a null value. From what we've done here, if I call a variable our null value and I set its value to null, if I do a type of our null value, give me object, even though what I did was null, right? So this is a universal JavaScript bug. Yeah, I said that. It's a universal JavaScript bug. It's an issue from the JS framework itself, and it's intentional, and they don't intend to fix it, right? Because there are several programs across the world that are running on null being equated to objects. And a fix in that bug would probably lead to more bugs, basically. So I had to do more research on that, and from several trusted resources, it's not something they're going to fix. It's something that has been on for 2 decades now, so they don't have any plans to fix that. However, if you wanted to find out if a value is null, you would need more compound conditions, right? So let's say we declare a variable, and we declare this variable called our null value, and we wanted to know if our null value is actually null. What we will do is, normally, if we do a type of our null value here, the answer will always give us object, right? Good. So we would combine some figures now. Let's say we have our null value, and then we try to add another, what's it called, condition. This may look a bit complex because I believe our viewers are learners, but no matter what happens, I just like to, throw in some complex things once in a while to see how this works for us. So this expression here, we are, this one in the middle is called an AND operator. It's a relational operator, right? It will only return true when both sides of the operator is true. So it will compute both sides. If both sides are true, it will return true. So it will compute here is the type of our null value equals to object. That is true, remember, from what we have here. And then it will now add it with this. If that is the case, it will return true. If it is not the case, it will return false. So let us click enter and see. We got null. We didn't get true or false. So let me come up here and negate this. So you could learn about this in further tracks, right? That talks about operators and all of that. You learn this. So if I should come here now and I hit enter, I can see true. So it first checks this first place. Our null value here, remember it is null, right? If I negate it and I check for the value of this already returns object for us. It can find that this is
Hello,
true.
Trina. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we're having some complaints. Is it possible to increase your control, to increase your the
Okay.
font size in the console?
Um, Give me a minute, please.
All right,
I have
thank
tried
you.
that already, but it's not working. But just give me a minute.
Because it's saying that we can't see anything. We say you should increase the font size instead of zooming in. Okay, someone is saying you should press Control Plus. I don't think that works. Okay. Now that was I. Okay, this looks okay. Yes, this looks.
Is this
Sorry,
better
I'm
now?
very. Yeah, it's better. Yes.
Okay. So thank you for that. Um, Now that it's even this big, so if you may want me to go back to the top and look through it again, but that's not a problem. That's not a problem. I'll do a recap before I leave this particular place. So, as a matter of fact, let me just even do that recap now. Okay, so to recap, I spoke about a few primitive data types and some reference data types, and I spoke about how to identify them. That's why we're on the console right now. So let's say I, create some variables. I'll call this variable our number, and I'll give the value of 50. I'll create another variable. I'll call it our string. I'll give it a value of 50. And I'll create another one, and I'll call it our Boolean. And I'll give it a value of false. And I'll create another variable, and I'll call it our objects. And for our objects, I would have something like this. I would say, we're talking about our organization here. So I would say name, top universe, and I would say sector, education. I could go further on this if I wanted to expand it. I could go further on this to say fees and do this. So this is the beauty of the reference data types. They are more dynamic. I could keep on doing this, and then when I use maybe a function like stringify, I can just beautify it and still come back to what I was doing before. But I would not go that deep right now. So I'll just leave it at this. So these are um, four variables that have been created, right? And these four variables have different data types. And like I said, the data, okay, let me create for our null value and call it null. So like I said, the content of the data is what determines the operations you can perform with that data. The variable itself does not have data type, but the value is what has data type. So if I wanted to know the values of all of them, I could do a type of, let me start with our number. This is what I get, it's number. I can do a type of our string. I can do a type of our Boolean. I can do a type of our object. You use the keyword type of in front of a variable name to actually determine the type of its contents, the type of data that it is holding, right? I would also like to state that Primitive data types stores data in stacks. Stacks are a type of data structure in programming that is a last in, first out approach, right? So just the way you stack something in, the first one goes to the bottom of the stack, the next one goes to the just goes on top of the bottom and all of that. So that's how primitive data type stores data. However, for reference data types, they store data in stacks and heaps. So they reference the heaps at all times, right? So when you have key value pairs, you can have your keys and then you have your key pointing to a value somewhere else on a particular heap. So you could have two objects referencing the same thing in reference data types. But I just wanted to just show us here that these are different kinds of data types and the operations that can be performed on them, and you can know the type of data. Let's say I want to perform some operations on them now, and I want to do a conversion on them, for instance. If I do a variable b is equal to our number, watch this now, and I do a plus new string value. Remember, our number is what? Number, right? I just declared this variable b. So let's see what that is. If I do a type of on b, I get a string, right? That is the value of b right now. If I do a log, I want to just check the value of b, I would always get this. So this is the value of b. So this is what we call an implicit coercion. So now I'm on that topic. The topic I'm talking about now is how we are converting the data. So initially, what I can have is a number, and I can convert it to a string, and I can convert it to several things. Let me still check the type of our value, our number. So this is still number, right? But for the purpose of this variable called b, what happened here in the JavaScript engine is this variable was turned to a string temporarily because of this plus sign. The plus sign here is when you're dealing with strings or when a string is involved in an operation, the plus sign turns it into a concatenation operation. Just join the two together. But if I wanted to do, if I said b is equal to our number, which is 50, right? If I do b is equal to our number plus 100. Now watch what happens. B automatically becomes 150. And if I do a type of on B, what I get is number. So this is why some developers will say JavaScript does not have data type, because anything you put in, it automatically converts it, automatically knows the data type that it works with, right? JavaScript variables don't have data types, but JavaScript values have data types. That's the misconception. Again, when people say there are no data types in JavaScript, that's not entirely true. JavaScript variables do not have data types, but JavaScript values have data types. So I just performed what we call an implicit coercion. Implicit coercion is when I'm changing the data type without expressly doing so, like obviously. So because there's no function here that is changing this to a number. The engine is doing that on its own. So this is implicit. If I wanted to perform an explicit coercion, I could do a b dot to string. And if I do b now, or type of b, sorry. Okay, so this is still number. Okay, so I want to change this to a string, and I'm going to be using a function which we call toString. This function, so it's not just toString, we have toString, to number, and we have several other ones, right? So what this would do is it would help us take a number and convert it to string. It's supposed to actually have the function mark because it's actually a function on its own. Um, if I do that again on B to, sorry, to string, and I do this, yeah. So this automatically turns what was in B into a string. And if I do a type of on B, it is telling me that it's not. Suppose I want it to give me the string value. I want it to give me the string value. Just give me a moment. So the value changes when I'm actually using it on, sorry, on another variable, right? So this is an example of an explicit coercion. This is me trying to use a function, an inbuilt function to change the type of a variable. You can also do the same thing for toNumber as well. If I were to clear this and I create, let me say our string, and I do this, like say our string is equal to our string dot number, that's, apologies. So it depends on, so I think it's just plain number. Yeah. Okay, let me just use the old school method. Sorry. This is it. I could also do other things on this. If I wanted to turn it into several other things, like let's say I want to add, I want to turn it into a decimal or thereabout, I could pass the value, right? We have pass int, we have pass float, and we also have floor. So with floor, we are rounding off the values, but that's under another topic for now. I'd like us to just do a quick trivia. If you've been following, I would like us to do, so let me just bring out the question. Okay, so if you're following, what would be the outcome of this operation? I don't want to show us here. Oh, I don't know. I wish I could see people's responses, basically. All right, I wish I could see their responses. Okay, since I am using the console, so I would not be able to do what I intend to do. I wanted to just give us a quick trivia. So if you wanted to use the type of operator on the type of operator again, say something like this, it would always return a string for you. The reason is this. This could easily come up in any test you're taking. If I perform the type of operator on 42, giving me number, right? But note that the number in itself is already, the response number is coming in form of a string, already in quotes. So if I were to do a type of this number, it will give me a string. So that is why when I do a type of, and I do this, it will give me a string, regardless of what other value is there. So these are just quick cheats that we should have at the back of our minds. So far so good. I've talked about some data types, right? When I share the slides, there is always a link for further reading that we can always have. I've talked about the basic primitive data types. I've also mentioned some of our reference data types, like objects. We also have reference data types that we call arrays and functions per se. I know most of us must have heard of arrays in different languages, basically, but I think I would just touch on a bit of the arrays per se. So let me have our array here. And the difference here in presentation basically is the arrays come in angular braces while the objects come in curly braces. So if I have an array, the array could be one-dimensional, it could be multi-dimensional. So for the one-dimensional array, let me have an array that just lists a couple of programming languages. So I'll say PHP, I'll say JS, I would say C sharp, right? I could perform several things on this array. If I do a type of here, who can guess what it's going to bring out? It's going to bring out object, right? So like I said, every other primitive data type is going to fall on that object if you are running a type of, basically. But there are other things that we can perform on this array if we just wanted to list its content, or we wanted to loop, we could loop through its content. We could perform several things, but I don't want to really talk about that here. We could loop through the content. We could perform. Let's just perform basic things, right? Let's see. Let's reference and then let's count. Let's reference and let's count. So we could do an array length that's a function that we could use to know the length of the array, and then we could always count or reference its values. So if we do an operation like this and call the function length, the answer is going to give us is 3. What this implies, as opposed to several other, what's it called now? Several other languages, is that the length of an array here is actually counting from 1. It's not counting from 0 like we know it to be, right? It's not the same thing per se. It's really not the same thing. For some languages, it would be giving us a length of 2, but this is not the same. But generally, the index still starts from 0. So if I wanted to check the index here, I wanted to see the item so what it just told us here is how many items are inside here. But when you are looping through it, when you are counting through it, it actually still starts from 0, basically. So if I wanted to find the first item in this array, this is what I'm supposed to do. Our array and I do this, and I do this. So the moment I put in 0, it does this. So what happens here is, even though there are 3 items, if you want to reference it, referencing is simply talking to someone else by addressing it to someone else, basically. So if I wanted to find the first element in this array, this has to be it. You use the index 0, right? If I wanted to find the second item here, I would use the index 1, right? You could also play with it. You could change the values. So if I do our array and I'm talking to the last item, which is third index, and I want to set it to a different value, and I want to set it to 60, for instance, and I give this. If I want to view our array again, you can see that I have successfully changed this item here, right, to 60. So if it were some languages like Java, I wouldn't be able to do this because an array must have all the data in an array must be the same data type in Java, but in JavaScript, it's not the same way. That's why some people still say JavaScript don't have data types and all of that, but that's not entirely true, right? So this is something that we are seeing, the manipulation of data in reference data types. We could, when we advance in other tracks, you would definitely be using reference data types more often. When you're performing loops, when you're passing data from your database to your views and all of those things, you definitely be working with a lot of reference data. So these are just just some basic things that we can do on them. We could count their length. We could, yeah, get the length. We could get values inside of it, right? We could do several other things on it, but that would be left for further reading, as it were. I would like to now go back to the presentation and just wrap up with the review. So do we have any questions? Do you have questions? Or did anybody not get anything while the screen was much smaller and all of that? Okay, so question, must arrays be declared with the const keyword, or can we use let or var? I wish this person could actually um, share his screen so that I would use him to answer the question. But yes, arrays can, you could also declare, it must not be with const per se. The array must not be with const per se. So we could also use other things. Let me just do that for the purpose of, so let me not even just use the const over. Let me say our new array equal to test 2, right? So this, I didn't even declare with const over. So the constant is just constant. It means I cannot use that for another thing else, right? But this is it. So I could also do the same thing here by doing our new array dot length, and it gives me this, and I will do our new array. I'm indexing it, and it still gives me this. So you could definitely do that. So you use your those are called I'm trying to remember the programming name for them again. You just use it to declare the nature of the variable. So then let me see if I could use our array. So I cannot use that variable name again. So what that const just does is I cannot use that variable name has already been taken as far as the system is concerned. I cannot use it to carry another type of data again. That's just what it does. It's not as if I must use const whenever I'm declaring an array, basically. So I don't know if that answers the question. Okay, it says, I noticed that when an object, the keys were also stringified, got a bit confused. I thought when both keys and just stringified, it's a JSON. So yeah, so JSON is not just a language on its own. JSON literally means JavaScript object notification, right? So if you're writing JS, if you're writing JSON, you're also writing JS, basically, right? I don't think I understand the first part where he said, I noticed that when you declare an object, the keys are also stringified. So I just declare the object normally. So if I were to do this again, yeah. Do you want to explain further by that? So basically, for object, I just use key value pair, right? I could also do this if this is where the confusion is coming from, right? I could also do our first value, our second value, right? And if I wanted to do our objects, oh, sorry. I think I should have used that same name. So I just want to try something here. Okay, so this definitely didn't work. For the avoidance of doubt, let me now do it this way. Sorry. Good. So the object has to come in key value pair, like I mentioned earlier. This is basic how it's supposed to be, right? So even if you see it as JSON on its own, it is still a JavaScript object. JSON simply means JavaScript object notation. That's basically what it is. I don't know if that answers the question, or you still have some gray areas. Samuel. Okay, can I recap converting strings to numbers? Sure. So for strings, remember we have our string here, right? So again, okay, so I want you to understand that it's not as if you have a book written and then the book is passed as a string, you want to convert that whole string into a number. But for this, right, there are certain ways that we can do it. I would like to do this explicitly. So I could say var our new string would be our string, right? And let me give it a value. Okay, let me do this now. Let me cut this out and do this. So I wrap it this way. And then when I do a type of for our new string, this is why I get a number, right? However, if I wanted to so notice that I am passing in the number type into a new one. That does not mean that when I come here and I do this, this would automatically turn to number. This is still string, basically. For the purpose of this operation, I converted it into number and passed it into a new variable. That should also be noted. But how about we just play around, right? Let's just do this. Just convert here. Yeah. So this goes straight to the number. And if I do a type of this guy now, let's see what it shows. It still shows this, right? So this passing, you would only get this passing value is at a particular instance in time. So to capture this, it is best to pass it into another variable, and then you will see the value in that particular variable. That's the best approach to this per se. You could also pass to, so this is you just passing to number, like an integer. There are different other numbers in JS per se. You could also pass to several. You could pass to double. You could pass to floats, and all of that, right? So let me see if we could do some. Just bring out some of my class work for us. So you could basically do a pass int into it if you want. And you could also do a, what's it called again now? You could also do a pass float. Yep. So let me just try a pass int. Okay. But I'll need to call it into another variable. So let me create, no, I don't want to use const. Let me do a variable called, sorry, I'm running out of variable names. This and do a pass int. So you can see a pass float, you can see a pass int. Pass float is for decimal. Pass int is for integers. So if I do this, and so if you see here, you can see the string and you can see the radix, right? For the string, you are putting in the string you want to pass in. And that's this value, our string. For the radix is the number system, right? All our numbers, our normal numbers are in base 10. So I use this here. So when I do this now and I do a type of for D, I'll get a number. Okay. Right. So if I do D and drop, I know that D is 50. Now, I don't know if that's clear enough. Just to recap, if I do our string is a string called 50. Remember? Right? And if I do, let me use another example now. E equals parse int. Sorry. I do the string. I want to change this to a number now. Our string, and I put the radix. The radix there is our number-based system of 10. And this gives me this. So this is me just passing this guy to this. But if I wanted to, so if you notice again, I passed the value into another one. If I came back to our string, regardless, I'm still saying this, right? But if I wanted to do this, let's just do this together and see. So this is it. But nonetheless, if I come here again and I do this, still show me as a string, right? So this is just an operation. This is the value of that operation. But that variable, its content has not actually changed, right? I don't know if that answers the question. Sorry, when I'm on my console, I cannot really see all the questions on here. So the admin can confirm if I still have more questions if I take the summary. Okay, I can't see any more. I can't see any more questions. Okay. Abraham, is this a question or a comment? Your comment is right. So I wanted to know if it's. So I don't know if these are questions now, or this is a chat going on.
Okay, I think he's answering his previous. He's replying on the previous question you answered concerning this. I think you can see this on your screen right now.
I can't see anything right now on my screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I
Give
can
me
see
a
this from
minute.
Abraham. To string function does not mutate state of the variable. Yes, so the state of the variable is the
Okay,
same.
so I think I've just
Okay. Samuel M. Ortil. Yeah, so what's I think I've answered
so I,
Samuel's question already.
okay. Oh, all right, that's fine.
Yeah. So I would go back to my presentation now and just run through um, some some of the things again. So you just confirm when you can see my presentation screen. Okay, I just saw a question. Can you shed more light on why parseInt function is taking two parameters? Okay, so to answer that question, the parseInt function is a built-in function in JavaScript, and it has those two parameters by default, right? However, I so I don't know how to answer why it has it, but basically it simply has it because it's a built-in function, and you need to supply that particular information for the built-in function to do what it's supposed to do. It wants to know if it wants to know if you are passing into a specific number base per se, right? So you need to just add it there. If you don't want to specify the number base, you can just use the number function instead. You don't actually have to use um, um, pass int. You could just turn it straight. There are other several ways to do it. You mustn't use the pass int per se. Another funny way to do it, if you wanted to change a string to a number, okay, I didn't show this. Let me just let me go back to. Sorry, I wanted to just show this real quick. Yeah, so let's say I have our string already to be this, right? There are several ways. I'm also do that particular way. So I've shown number, I've shown pass int. You could also just multiply it by a number and it will change, basically. I could do our new, sorry, our new string, which is 50 there, right? To be equal to our string and just multiply it with a number, not add, multiply with a number. And then you get this. There are several ways that you can convert it to a number. Basically, if the value there before is a number that is enclosed in a quote, I keep saying that, right? But still, it doesn't change the fact that when I do a type of this guy, it will still give me a string. Don't forget that, please. So several ways I could do on our string, which is this. I could do our new string is equal to number our string, like so. And I can see that is this. I can also say our new string is equal to pass int. And so you can see it here. So when I was doing one for number, this didn't come out. So for this function number, although you can see the sign here that this question mark, I don't think it's compulsory. I think by default to do it for you to base 10 per se. So let's just do that together. And yeah, that works. So you mustn't always, but I think that is there for you to just, I think that is there for you to specify just in case you're not sure of the number base that you're trying to take it to. But then again, it can work without it. From the documentation, that particular parameter is not compulsory per se. So if we do the last one, there are actually about 7 ways to just convert a string to a number. But this is just 3 ways, basically. We get this. So there are a lot of ways that we can do that. This is just some of them. I don't know if that answers the question on why we are using, why parsestring has 2 parameters. Okay, so I would go straight to my slides and go. I don't want to walk us through all of this again. So I spoke about this earlier on as well when I talked about undefined variables and undeclared variables. An undefined variable is one that has been declared in the accessible scope, but at the moment, no, it doesn't have a value in it. So I can do a var a, and when I check it, it will show me undefined. The variable has been declared in the accessible scope, but it doesn't have any value yet. But if it is undeclared, it has not been formally declared in the accessible scope. That's the difference. They are not the same thing. It's just things I just feel we should know. Forgive my slides, a bit junked up. Presenting through another means, sorry. So the major differences between a primitive and reference type, like I said earlier on, when you declare a primitive data type, it is stored on a stack, right? A stack is a simple data structure that the computer uses to store and retrieve data quickly. A primitive data type on the stack is identified by the variable name you use to declare in your variable. With each primitive data type you create, data is added to the stack. For reference data types, when you create a variable and assign it a value that has a reference data type, the computer does not directly store that data in that variable, as is the case, right? So what you've assigned is a variable that points to somewhere. There's an image just here that shows that, okay, I didn't add the image, but I shall add that in the slides when I am sending it to everyone through the organizers. That's just the last part. So for the review, about 6 major points I chose to highlight here, just so that we know that. Number 1 is JavaScript has 7 built-in types. Some types are subtypes, which we have seen. But the built-in ones, we have null, we have undefined, we have Boolean, we have number, we have string, we have object, and we have symbol. Under object, we have other things under it, right? Under number, we have types under it too. They can be identified by the type of operator. The second thing I'd like us to remember is that variables don't have types, but the values in them do. These types define the intrinsic behavior of the values. The next thing I'd like us to remember is that many developers will always assume that undefined and undeclared are roughly the same thing. But in JavaScript, they're quite different. Undefined is a value that a declared variable can hold, right? But undeclared means a variable that has never been declared. They're 2 different things. Please note that. Also, JavaScript also has reference data types, which are as follows: objects, functions, arrays, and etc. But basically, you're good if you know objects, functions, and arrays. Basically, you're good. For the next point, primitive data types are stored in stacks in the memory with reference to, while reference data types, are stored as pointers in a stack to a heap. So there's a stack and there's a heap. The stack is the variable name, right? the objects in that variable are pointing to somewhere else. That's one of the differences between primitive and reference data types. And lastly, reference data types do not have a fixed size per se. They are dynamic and they can easily be they can be more manipulated. Let me just put it that way. Than primitive data types. You can use them to do, you can build on them to do other things, and their state changes basically. But for primitive data types, the value in them is not that dynamic per se, right? So these are some of the points. I may not have worded them to the way that fits what you want, what you know, basically. But feel free to always reach out if you have other questions. For further reading, I really recommend O'Reilly's Library. Real good, real good ones. The book has this particular first link has several chapters, but I think if you read from chapter 1 to chapter 4 of this book, you should be good to go on everything data types as related to JavaScript. And also this free code camp link that talks about the differences between primitive and reference data types. They're really good read. Looking at them, you definitely have a very solid background on manipulating JavaScript data types. Thank you once again for following me to this point. You guys really made me quite nervous, but I think we're good. If we have further questions and further comments, I don't mind still taking them before the organizers can call it a wrap. So thank you. Thank you again. Bye.
Hi, Uchenna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Amaka.
All right, so I'll start by saying thank you for your time. Thank you for the session, even though a part of it wasn't clear, but it got clear towards the end. So thank you so much. There are currently no questions here. Well, we'll just have thank you, sir. Good night, sir. So thank you so
Before we
much
do good
for.
night, if there are things that are not clear, I can still clarify them, except you don't have the time. Well,
Okay, I don't have any questions here. So, guys, if you have questions, please go ahead to ask your question. As for the slides, you get them later on. But so far so good. There are
okay.
no questions. And also, I would be dropping Uchena's LinkedIn handle so you can go on LinkedIn, connect with him, and possibly feel free to ask him questions.
Yeah, sure, sure.
All right. So we have thank you for the inputs from this is Latif. So we just have more of thank you coming up. So thank you once again, Uchena. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your explanations. I think you can see all the thank yous on your screen right now.
Yes, I can see them. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would really love to get back if you have more. If you'd have me, I'd love to get back and discuss further things with you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you once again, everyone. This is a great idea.
All right. So thank you so much. So if we have questions to get across to you, if we need you to come back and throw more light, I would also get that across to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. So good night, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from. Have a lovely day ahead. So bye, everyone. Bye, Gina. So guys, if you're